Welcome to our webinars for today. So, my name is Shinakay Patosa, your guidance officer. So, just a little reminder for today's webinar. Please use your USPF Gmail account upon attending the webinar. Please refrain from posting unnecessary comments during the webinar, and the comment section is only intended for asking questions during the open forum. The evaluation form link will be posted on your official face in our official Facebook page, and the evaluation cutoff is today until 2 p.m. only. The evaluation form will be the basis for your attendance and e-certificate. And the e-certificate will be sent through your email, and please give us time to prepare for your e-certificate. Okay? To begin with, let us have the invocation followed by Philippine National Anthem and the USPF Loyalty Song.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Kayang magiling, teras ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuwin ka ng magiting, sa manlulupang, di ka pasisili, sa dagat at puno, sa simoy, sa langit mo paghaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa patayang pinamahal. Ang islap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niyang kailan mo'y di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng luwalhati pagsinta, mo'y langit sa piling mo. Ligaya na pag may pag-aapi, mamamatay ng dahil sa'yo. From all corners of the Philippines, we have come to be with you. Our quest for knowledge, our quest for truth, we bring to you for you to soothe. We sing to you, dear alma mater. We sing to you, we cheer for you. University of Southern Philippines, loyal sons and daughters ever, will remain through thick and thin. Nothing shall this bond ever sever. University
let us hear the opening remarks of Mr. Charles Roy P. Baguio, our Assistant VP for Academic Support and the OIC of Student Affairs Services. Sir Charles?
Ah, Sorry for that technical problem.
It's okay, sir.
Dr. Janet Arcana, Dean of the College of Teacher Education, Arts and Sciences, other academic and non-academic heads, Dr. Elita Cui, Guidance and Testing Director, students, parents, faculty, counselors and staff, our esteemed resource person from the Department of Health, Dr. Mary Grace Samuel Benedian, and Dr. Jasmine Peralta, Chief of Hospital of DOH, personnel and youth from our partner communities in Cordova, Cebu. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A popular quote goes, "Drug addiction destroys lives, tears apart families, and harms society." The destructive effects of drug addiction is very much visible. But why has it not stopped many from getting addicted to it? This leads us to another popular quote from Donald Lynn Frost, which goes, "Drugs takes you to hell, disguised as heaven." Drug addiction is a demon masquerading behind its pleasure and enjoyment. This year's Drug Abuse Awareness webinar bears the theme, "Share Facts on Drugs, Save Lives," highlights the great value of drug education and how being well informed can be life-saving and life-changing. To this, USPF desires to lend a helping hand. Aside from the lectures embedded in the curriculum, this webinar on the risk factors of substance abuse is also being held for every one of us, and we are blessed to have with us an expert coming from the DOH as our resource person this morning. May this webinar strengthen our resolve to be one with a legitimate fight against drugs, to commit ourselves to stay away from it. Do not be fooled. Do not be deceived by bad circles of friends and various influences that will try to drag you towards drug use through peer pressure, misinformation, and misguided values. Do not let your problems be an excuse to seek refuge to the temporary, laxative, and hallucinatory effects of drugs, because they will do you more harm than good, and they will add to your problems rather than solve it. Remember that their tempting becomes stronger when you feel most vulnerable, weak, alone, hopeless, and problematic. Anchor your values on what truly count most to you: God, family, friends, healthy relationships, studies, work, your dreams and aspirations, your present and your future. Don't be a slave to drugs. Fight for your freedom from it. Treasure your health and keep your sanity. Help those who are about to fall into its trap and those who have fallen into its dark pit. Give them hope and a helping hand. Drug use is one of the things which you don't need to try yourself to know its effects. But you will know its effects by looking at those who have fallen victim to it, how they have been gradually ruined and eaten up by this evil, and how they too have become spreaders of its evil effects to others. Addiction is socially contagious. It can be a form of epidemic that plagues society. Seek the grace and strength from God with prayer and a strong spiritual life. As St. Paul says in his first letter to the Corinthians, and I quote, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it." End of quote. Draw inspiration from those whom you love and those who love you and desire their happiness, and train your focus on your worthy goals and dreams. I warmly welcome you all to this morning's Drug Abuse Awareness webinar. Again, share facts on drugs, save lives, and start it with yourselves and those within your inner circle. Be a good influence and protect yourself from the bad. May our God, who created us to be the eternal happiness of heaven, lead you and strengthen you against drugs, the evil pretender of a false heaven and happiness that really leads to hell, destruction, and a life of regret. Once again, a pleasant morning to you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Charles, for formally welcoming us. So, and now let us have a special message from Dr. Jasmine T. Peralta, the Chief of Hospitals from VOH TRC Cebu.
Hello, good morning. A pleasant morning to everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
So today we are having this webinar, which is in relation with our observance of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Week, which is on the third week of November. So we have the theme, Share Facts on Drugs and Save Lives. Dr. Elita Cui, the organizer of this event and director of the guidance and testing services of the USPF, the university president, Attorney Paulino Yabao, Mr. Charles Roy Baguio, the assistant VP for academic support services, Mr. Kent Sevilla, guidance officer, the host for this event, for the webinar, Dr. Janet.
Hi, Doc. Excuse me, Doc. Na-mute ka, Doc. Hello, Doc. Hello, Doc. Excuse me, Doc. Sir, ipasalod ko. Hi, Doc. Excuse me.
Sorry, naputol na.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay, so as we all know, with the Republic Act 9165, in the Article 4, there must be the active participation of the faculty, the family, the students, teachers, and school administrators in the enforcement of the act. So we must have a particular share of responsibility in the prevention and in deterring the use of dangerous drugs to the students in the school. So we also have to refer them if ever they have problems with drug dependence. So for the students, we have our own share of responsibility of knowing what are the ill effects of drugs. If we are knowledgeable of what are the ill effects of drugs, maybe we will be able to really find ways on how not to be affected with these drugs. So I hope with this morning's webinar, we will be able to learn, not only learn, be informed, and apply it in ourselves, practice it in what we say, walk the talk. We share it with our families, with our friends, so that in our own little way, we will be able to save lives. Because we all know that drug addiction is not only a disease that affects the particular individual with the drug problem, it is a disease of the family. And also, the school is a family, it's an extended family of each and every student. So I hope we will join hands and work hand in hand. USPF and DOH Cebu TRC, may we remain as partners in our fight against drug abuse. So to everyone, thank you so much for being a part of this particular endeavor. To God be all the glory, and I hope we will always be drug free. Daghang salamat. Thank you so much and good morning.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine, for the wonderful message. So at this juncture, allow me to introduce to you our resource speaker. She is a medical specialist one in Department of Health, Treatment and Rehabilitation Center, Cebu City for Females and Patients Section since 2018. Please help me welcome Dr. Mary Grace Sangual Binilian.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Doc.
I am privileged to be invited as the speaker for today's webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to start with my presentation. For more than 2 decades, research has tried to determine how drug abuse begins and how it progresses. Many factors can add to a person's risk for drug abuse. So these risk factors can increase a person's chances for drug abuse, while protective factors can reduce the risk. However, most individuals at risk for drug abuse do not start using drugs or become addicted. Also, a risk factor for one person may not be for the other, so meaning it's unique. Substance abuse and problematic patterns of substance use among youth can lead to problems at school, cause or aggravate physical and mental health related issues, promote poor peer relationships, cause motor vehicle accidents, and place stress on the family. They can also develop into lifelong issues such as substance dependence, chronic health problems, and social and financial consequences. So this morning, we will discuss about the facts, risk factors, and consequences of drugs. So let us define what is a drug. So it is any chemical that can affect a person in such a way as to bring about physiological, emotional, or behavioral change. An example of which is paracetamol. So I think everyone here has tried using paracetamol. There are also other dangerous drugs labeled as dangerous, meaning these are those that have high tendency for abuse and dependency. So these substances may be organic or synthetic and pose harm to those who use them. An example of which is marijuana. We go now to the next question. Doc, what is addiction? So, addiction is a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive, difficult to control, and often continue despite the harmful consequences. So when you say, Doc, is it considered addiction if I only used once or twice? The answer is no, because addiction should be chronic, meaning it is repetitive, nagbalik-balik. So in the Philippines, we have the following statistics. This is as of August 31, 2021. Sad to say, 3,869 of the total statistics would include children. So these children are involved in illegal drug trade, use, possession, and paraphernalia. So these are the following substances of abuse. We have the amphetamines and other stimulants, alcohol, cocaine, and cannabis. Another are the hallucinogens, hypnotics and sedatives, nicotine, and opioids. So we discussed a little about those mentioned drugs, substances of abuse, as earlier. So we first discussed a little about tobacco. So tobacco is used to arouse. So it is said that people using tobacco would have an increase in attention and concentration. Some would also say that it will enhance their memory, reduce their anxiety, and suppress their appetite. Another is the opioids. So this is extracted from the poppy seed. So part of this are the heroin, morphine, another class are the cannabinoids. So the marijuana, as mentioned earlier, which is considered a dangerous drug, belongs to this class. So it is said that marijuana, or also known as hashish oil, keef, bang, and charas, has many other forms. So this is from a resin gland-rich flowering tops of female plants. Here in Cebu in particular, there have been reports in the past that plantation of marijuana can be found in the provinces of Cebu. But for now, they are regulated, and those that are trying to produce or to grow this kind of plants are imprisoned and are considered to violate Section RA 9165. So cannabinoids can be used through smoking, oral consumption, vaporization, and knifing. Another type is the cocaine, also known as hydrochloride and crack. So these are from the leaves of this plant, Erythrocloxon coca, which is an indigenous to Bolivia and Peru. So this can be found in Bolivia and Peru. So these are commonly imported. So this is a powerful stimulant and is sniffed, used via intravenous, and some of which are smoked. So there are two forms of cocaine. These are in the freebase and are or in the crack form. I'm sure that cocaine is not some of our audience here is not so familiar with the cocaine since um, cocaine is quite expensive, no, in our country. Another class are the amphetamines. So included in this class is the shabu, or what um, we commonly know, which is also the most common abuse drug in the Philippines. So these are also known to suppress appetite and is used for narcolepsy and ADHD. We also have what we call designer drugs. So these are often referred to as club drugs, raves, and circuit parties. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the reports. I think several years ago that a student from Cebu died after engaging into designer drugs during a party. So designer drugs are what we call methylene dioxymethamphetamine, or commonly known as ecstasy. So this can cause a profound feeling of relatedness, capacity to induce feelings of warmth, and sensual, not sexual drugs. So these are the sought after effects of these designer drugs. So what are the severe effects of ecstasy? Since many of our teenagers are can come across this kind of designer drug. So this can cause altered mental status, hyperthermia or the feeling of warmth, convulsion, hypertension or the elevation of your blood pressure, acute renal failure, dehydration, and death. So the types of abuse substances mentioned in the previous slides are classified as to their effects. In the Philippines, the most common abuse substance is methamphetamine or shabu, followed by marijuana and inhalants respectively. So, for your stimulants, included in this classification is the shabu, cocaine, ecstasy, and morphine. However, for your depressants, alcohol, heroin, opium, and ketamine. For hallucinogens, we have the marijuana or your cannabis sativa and the inhalants. So what are the signs and symptoms? Doc, I often encounter this question. Doc, when you say stimulants, unsa may effect ana sa imong lawas? Unsa may mahitabo ana sa imuha, Doc? So, the most common signs and symptoms of once a person takes in the stimulants is the person gets easily provoked, gets constant blushing, dali ra kay mamula, bisag murag nakakita ni crush, no? Every minute. Next, hyperactivity. Very talkative, dili na muundang og istorya. Very alert, awake, magsiga na lang ang mata kay sa sobrahan sa iyahang stimulation. Dilated ang pupils, mo nang ang uban mag-shades because they cannot tolerate, no? Looking at the kanang kung magtanaw sila sa adlaw or kung naa sila sa outdoors, hayag kaayo kay dilated man ang ilang pupils. That's why they prefer to wear shades. There is also the elevated in heart rate, the elevation in your respiratory rate, paspas kay ang pulba sa kasing-kasing, paspas kay ang ginawaan, paspas pug kaayo ang increase sa imong blood pressure. So the effects will also lead to paranoia. Di na mahilo na, magsige na laglingi-lingi. Anxiety, very anxious. Murag kadalihok niya bantayan or feeling niya siya ray gitanaw. And also psychosis. That's why some of these people would think nga ang iyahang kanang nga person lahi na ang iyang ma-perceive or that thing nga iyahang makitaan is is equivalent to another. Like, we have a patient. Dok, I thought nga ang kahoy, ako tong mama. Diba? So there is an alteration in the perception of the individual. For the depressants, what are the most common signs and symptoms? Well, from the word depressant itself, and with the example alcohol, so ang tao, kasagaran, underactive, magluya, with droopy eyelids, kasagaran, hilom ra kaayo. With equivalent po siya, or since, di ba, as we mentioned earlier, ang stimulant is modulate ang ilang pupils. Contradictory po, ang sa depressant, mo constrict ang ilang pupils. Meaning, murag ngit-ngit na kailang paminaw, kay mo gamay naman ang ilang pupils ato. And cold, magsigi o cold sweaty skin. So bisag panington, bisag naa sa aircon, mo na sila. So mo na ang common. And reverse po sa atong stimulants which increases in your heart rate, your respiratory rate, and BP, your depressant, the effect is the reverse, which will decrease. So what are the sought after effects? So ang pakalma, dok, mo inom lang yun ko, kay aron makalma ko, kay tensyonado naman ko kay ko, dok, problemado na kay ko, gusto lang kong ma-relax. Or the feeling to relieve the tension or the mental stress. Naapoy uban, nga moingon nga para ma-improve ang ilang coping to some situational pressures. Like, dok, ibugan ko sa kong uyab. Heartbroken kaayo ko karon, dok, mo unang nagsikog inom para makalimot ko niya. And the enhancement of a high induced by other drugs. So, some people, dili lang kay alcohol ang gamito, no? Some of them, dunganon ang shabu, ang stimulant, and the depressant. So, with large doses, unsa may mahitabo sa tao kung daghan na kaayo or dako na kay ang iyang gi-consume aning mga depressant. So there is impaired muscle coordination mo nang uban dili nakabarog, mulingkod na lang sa gutter, di ba? Ang uban mubo na kay ang blood pressure. There is a fall in the blood pressure and it even becomes fatal when combined with other drugs. So unsa man ang mga short effects gidi ay, dok, mo diretso ra ba na sa inana nga mamatay or makoma or delikado na kaayo diretso? No, it also has some short-term effects. So, diminished emotional response to external stimuli. So, ang uban, mamanhid, mo bitaw nga moingon sila, dok, munang magsikog inom, muti ko aning mga depressants para makalimot ko kadali sa akong mga problema. Reduce inhibition, mental alertness, drowsiness, lethargy, and impaired judgment. So, ang uban, kung wild na kaayo, kanang mga naa sa clubs, masubrahan na og inom, or makasubrahan nag-take aning mga depressants, makalimot sila sa ilang inhibitions. So, some, wala ginang maka-engage og other nga high-risk behaviors. How about your hallucinogens? So, these are referred to as psychedelics. So when we say psychedelics, it would produce the following signs and symptoms: the pleasurable state of relaxation and the enhancement of sensory experiences, more vivid sense of sight, taste, and hearing. So para anang tawhana nga nakatake aning mga hallucinogens, ang candy nga gamay kaayo, equivalent na sa isa ka cake, kay ma-perceive man niya nga sobra-sobra ang usa ka butang. Okay? So the effects, perceptions may be distorted. The thinking becomes low and confused, impaired intellectual and physical performance. So, mo na siya ang katong hallucinogens, which is, the common example is marijuana. For your inhalants, so what are the signs and symptoms when you take in inhalants? So initially, they are active, then become depressed. Palit lang, abtik pa man kay tuganihan, kalit ra magkaluya, di naman mutingog. Sunod, they become pale and emaciated. Dayon, mamula ang ilahang mga nostrils, kung ato lang po yung tanawon, ha? But these are signs and symptoms nga kung ato lang yung i-observe closely for these individuals. However, for the effects, They produce similar effects as to those taking in hallucinogens. So there is also confusion and restlessness. Hallucination may cause anxiety and panic or even psychotic episodes. Muna mo ingon, nabuang naman siguro to among silingan, Dok. Kining kalit raman. So, pwede nga ang inhalants ang iyang gitake or hallucinogens. So most affect the brain's reward circuit, causing euphoria or kanabitang state nga happy kay ka, chill kaayo, as well as flooding it with the chemical messenger dopamine. So the keyword here is dopamine. A properly functioning reward system motivates a person to repeat behaviors needed to thrive, such as eating and spending time with loved ones. Surges of dopamine in the reward circuit cause the reinforcement of pleasurable but unhealthy behaviors like taking drugs, leading people to repeat the behavior again and again. That's why it is again called chronic. As a person continues to use drugs, the brain adapts by reducing the ability of the cells in the reward circuit to respond to it. So iyang gubon ang mga cells sa imuhang brain. This reduces the high that the person feels compared to the high that they feel when first taking the drug. An effect known as tolerance. So naanad na siya, no? Because balik-balik naman ang iyang paggamit sa substance. So they might take more of the drug to try and achieve the same high. This brain adaptation often lead to the person becoming less and less able to derive pleasure from another things once they enjoyed, like food, sex, or social activities. So muna ang uban mo ingon, bahalag makadruga ko, o bahalag di ko mukaundok, bahalag di ko tagdon anak kong pamilya, basta makasuyip lang ko, makatira lang ko og drogas. Because ning compete na, nakakita na sila og pleasure dito sa illegal substance nga ilang gitake compared to the natural rewards or those things nga ilahang needed. So this is the brain. So certain parts of the brain govern specific functions. So naay parts sa atong brain nga mo'y nag-control sa atong memory, sa atong vision, coordination, judgment, reward, and sensation. Point to areas such as the sensory, motor, and visual cortex to highlight their specific functions. So kanino nga mga areas? The memory, the visual cortex, mo ni siya ang bigger dako kaayog importansya kay mao man ni ang maigo gyud pod kung mag-take na og illegal substances ang isa ka tawo. So your cerebellum here is in charge of your coordination. So unsa may mahitabo kung ang tao magbalik-balik na o gamit og illegal drugs? Mao na nga dili na siya katarong og lakaw, di na siya katarong og panglihok, ang uban di nakabarog. So the next slide, I'm not sure if this slide will play, no? This is supposed to be a video showing how a drug affects the brain or how it works on the brain. I think dili siguro ni mo play diri sa ato ang platform, but I'll just like to summarize it. So to make it simple, how do drugs work? So ang drugs, ang iyang main target is ang atong brain. So when masulod na siya dito sa atong system, it goes to the brain and it competes with our natural rewards because mo-produce man siya og dopamine. And over time, because of the chronicity or sa iyang pagbalik-balik o gamit sa isa ka person anang illegal drugs, maka-form siya og tolerance. So muna nga makalimot na siya sa other important or basic needs niya as a person. So mas mo prefer na siya to use drugs. So I will proceed with my next slide. So why do people take drugs in the first place? Dok, ano mo gamit man gyud og drogas ning mga tawhana? The answer is, so research has shown that people generally take drugs to either feel good, the sensation seekers, or anyone wanting to experiment with the feeling of high or feeling different, or to feel better. Mao ni ang mga individuals who take drugs in an attempt to cope with difficult problems or situations, including stress, trauma, and symptoms of mental disorders. So why are drugs so addicting? Dok, ano maka-addict man gyud na sila, dok? Unsa man gyud di ay mabuhat ana nila? Unsa man gyud ay epekto ana nila? Again, as I've mentioned earlier, they compete with your natural rewards. So what are these natural rewards again? So these are the food, the water, sex, and nurturing. So the initial decision to take drugs is voluntary for most people. Di ni sila pugson. Sila gyud ang voluntaryo nga mo decide ani. But repeated drug use can lead to brain damages that challenge an addicted person's self-control and interfere with their ability to resist intense urges to take drugs. So these brain changes can be persistent, which is why drug addiction is considered as relapsing. So in people having or going through with the recovery from drug abuse are at an increased risk for returning to drug use even after years of not taking the drug. So it is not an assurance nga moingon ta nga 2 years naman kudwok nga wala ko ning gamit gyud og illegal drugs or sober na gyud ko. So ano na gyud ni siya, dok, indication na gyud ni siya nga dili na ko mobalik sa akong bisyo. The answer is no, because again, it is relapsing. And ang katong mga person nga nakasuway na og katong drug use are at a very high risk of going back to their old ways. So this slide would show kung unsa kuno ang level. This is an experiment no conducted in an animal because again dili man ta allowed no nga to conduct ana sa humans labi na og kuan kaayo invasive ang procedure. So the natural rewards increases dopamine neurotransmission. So for example, eating something that you enjoy or engaging in sexual behavior can cause dopamine levels to increase. So in this graph, dopamine is being measured inside brains of animals. Its increases shown in response to food or sex. The basic mechanism has been carefully shaped and calibrated by evolution to reward normal activities critical for survival. So once kuno nga mo take in ta og food, mo increase ang atong dopamine levels. Like this one, kaning naa sa imuhang right side. And for those people nga mo engage of sexual activity, taas pod, maka-release pod sila no, mas taas pa gani sa food ang ilang ma-release nga dopamine levels. However, for those people nga mo take og mga abusive nga substances such as your amphetamine, your cocaine, nicotine, and morphine, surprisingly, mas taas pa ang ilang dopamine level nga ma-produce ikumpara sa food, sex, nurturing, and even water, no? So, imagine kung ang katong food ug ang sex ganiyan nara sa 150, ang kani silang amphetamine naabot na sila sa 1,000, naabot na sila og 400, ang nicotine more than 200, and then ang morphine taas gihapon. But naal mo, decrease lang po siya over time. So these are the reasons nga nung addictive kaayo, kaingon ani man ang effect sa dopamine release sa atong body. So we go now to the triggers. So this table presents how how the risk and the protective factors affect people in 5 domains or settings where interventions can take place. So what are these domains? The individual, the family, the peer, ang iyang mga friends, at school, and at or in the community. So risk factors can influence drug abuse in several ways. The more risk a child is exposed to, the more likely the child will abuse drugs. So imagine, kung ang bata, magsugod lang tayo, actually example, ang child, let's just say, 10-year-old child, nga makakita siya nga iyang mama ug ang iyang papa mo gamit og drugs. And then, ang community, ang ilang mga silingan, daghan kayo mo gamitay pod. So, what do you think will happen to the child? So, meaning, mas predispose siya or you are putting the individual in a high-risk situation nga gamit po siya og drugs in the long run. So, nakakuha ko na inangutanan na ko ani before nga patient. Dok, kung ang papa mo gamit or ang papa adik, ang anak mo pud ba adik? Makatakod ba na siya, dok, or mapasa ba na siya? Ma-inherit pa pud na. So, kung genetics ba kuno na, like, pwede ba kuno na like cancer or hypertension? So, it is not clear as of today that addiction is the result of kanang one factor alone. But it is safe to say that addiction is a result of a complex interaction, which is your biology, the environment, the environmental interaction. So, moto as mentioned earlier, katong mga 5 domains nga akong na-mention, katong community, the individual, even at school, the peers. Moto ang mo affect possibly kung naato yung mga interaction ato niya, that would result to the high risk of putting an individual nga mogamit pod. So the likelihood of someone who abuses drugs then becoming addicted to them also depends on the balance of his or her level of exposure to risk and protective factors, which span the whole spectrum, from individual or the genetics, the developmental and the behavioral aspect, to the social, which includes your family, the community, the environment, ang peer pressure, ang economic burden. Muna siya ang factors. So the more positive these factors are, the more they will afford a measure of protection or resistance to the risk of drug abuse. So prevention programs, including behavioral skills training and environmental modification, can be designed to enhance protective factors. So what do we mean by this? So kung pananglitan, makakita ka nga ang kanang individual is naa sa community nga daghan kay mo gamit, how do you reduce the risk of that individual to get involved in using illegal drugs? So you get the individual or you advise the individual to transfer to an area nga less or walay magamit nga og illegal drugs. However, for the katong family, di man nato makontrol, lain sad kay imo ingon ta nga ipahawa lang na imong papa diretso kay mao man kanay mo gamit. Yes, possibly we can do that. But it is unlikely man kaayo, no? Kay family good sila and individualized man gud na ang structure ana nila. So mao na nga naay mga prevention programs including behavioral skills training and environmental modification nga gidesign to enhance these protective factors. So again, naay involvement sa individual, sa family, sa peer cluster, as well sa community to prevent the drug abuse. Because later on, when somebody or that individual is already taking drugs or is already abusing the illegal substance, it will lead to alcohol and drug-related accidents, na ay mga sexually transmitted diseases including AIDS, suicidal behavior, unwanted pregnancies, kasagaran mag-stowaway na or mulayas na sa ilahang balay, bisag mga minors pa, juvenile depression, academic failure and dropping out of school, and delinquency. So, madelinquent na ang bata. Wala na siya future. Naguba na ang iyang kaugmaon. Okay. So, this slide shows several apples. No, Dok, nagunsa man ang apple diha. Okay. This is just to represent na lang, no, the different phases of addiction. So, note that as each phase increase, the appearance of the apple also changes. So, the last phase is dependence, which shows that the apple is already rotten. Nalata na ang apple, meaning an individual who is already a drug dependent has already developed adverse changes in his mind and body. So, what are the phases of addiction? First, we have abstinence. Moingon pa nga, di lang ko ana, mulikay pa ka. However, there is experimentation. Sige, mo try lang ko, kausa lang. Kausa lang yun, mag-experiment lang ko ani. Next, mo develop siya into social or recreational phase. Meaning, na, lingaw-lingaw raman kana lang kung naay mag-birthday or naalay mag-fiesta. Okay ra na. Sige, tilaw lang, once a month raman, Dok. Panagsara kaayo. Until mo develop into habituation, meaning mahimo na siyang habit. In this phase, naanay loss of control. So muingon ka nga, example, alcoholic beverages. 1 glass a day ramando. But when you say, how many? Ang isa ka glass, basinog niya ang ihang baso kay murag isa ka drum, kadako. So it becomes a habit. So there is already loss of control. Dili na siya kahibalo kung pila or unsa kadaghan na ang dapat niyang i-take. There is no limit anymore. Next, we have abuse or there is already tolerance. At this point, kasagaran sa individual, dili na sila makuntinto sa katong mga ginagmay pa na amounts or katong mga minimal palangkay na amounts. They tend to increase the dose of the substance. And again, there is dependence or the drug-seeking behavior already. So, dili na siya kalihok without the substance. So, this slide would show 4 stages kuno, no? So, the first stage is the curiosity. So, experimentation. So, kasagaran gyud sa atong patients, nganong ning gamit man ka og drugs? Wala lang, Dok, na curious lang ko. So, curiosity is the motivator. First, the person struggles with trust and mistrust. But high is still a new feeling. So, they seek the feeling of getting high. So, anindot man di ay nino, at first, ganahan sila. So, they proceed with the next stage. So, in the next stage, there is already regular use. So, the user is thinking more about drugs. Relationship becomes difficult. Regularly uses drugs alone most of the time, and they think that they are still in control. So, they proceed with the next stage, the risky use or the abuse stage. So, in this stage, seeks out the high. Magsige na sila pangita, asa naman to nga katong mura kog mulupad. Hay kaayo ko, wala ko'y problemang mahuna-hunaan. And they develop the confidence in using the drugs. The user thinks that the drugs won't hurt, dili na makaapekto niya. Uses with peer group. Kasagaran mo nang mag-jam-jam na sila, na yung mga session nga mahitabo. And lastly, the dependency stage. So they can no longer get high. Bisan pag daghan na kaayo na, bisan pag makahurot na sila og isa siguro ka bag, dili na sila mahay. Wala na sila muna na ang ilang mamiss because again, there is already tolerance. Ning-agi naman sila sa tolerance nga phase and then dependent naman sila. So uses the drug to avoid of feeling sick. The drugs become the center of their lives. That's why they cannot function without using or taking in the drug. So what can drug addiction do? Number one, it damages your health. It destroys your family. It destroys your career. It destroys relationship with friends and community. So the common word here is destroy and damage. Mostly destroy, no? Kay makadestroy man po siya sa imong health. So what are the symptoms of addiction? First, we have cravings or the wanting, the desire to use. Kabantay mo ng mga mabdus nga mangala, mo na ang ilang feeling, magsigi o pangita. However, they proceed with the next symptom, which is the urge. Kani nga part, mo na ni ang naay doing or the action part, which would cause changes in behavior, the appearance, the mood, and the interest. So ang uban mag-wild na kung dili kainom og beer, kung dili palitan og sigarilyo, manghagis na. So the million-dollar question here is, Dok, matambalan pa ba ni kung maadi ko sa drugas? The answer is yes. Addiction is a treatable disease. So advances in drug abuse treatment help people stop abusing drugs and start leading productive lives. However, kaning nga picture, kaning first, mao ni ang brain sa healthy nga control or sa healthy nga individual. So when the person starts to take in illegal drugs and abuses it, naagi changes nga ma-produce sa iyang brain. You see? Napatoy red, no? The second picture in the middle, nawala na. Kinaan naman ang effects nga brought about by the drugs. However, when the person stops using drugs or for prolonged abstinence, na ay mabalik-balik or maulian ang iyang brain function. However, dili na gyud pareha atong sa una, nga normal na gyud. Syempre, naa na gyud traces sa effects sa drugs. Kaya ang atong brain dili man siya regenerating, unlike sa atong atay nga kung naay gamay nga problema, maulian ra siya. Ang atong brain cannot regenerate. Okay, once there is already defect or naanay damage. So next, we have the long-term effects of drugs. So, naay impairment sa judgment, the learning, decision-making, how we handle stress, memory, as well as behavior. So when you look at the picture, kaning tao, these are animated pictures supposedly, no? So, kaning nga tao, kaning naa sa kahoy, imbis nga ang iyang putlon is kang katong naa sa iyang likod, ang atubangan niya ang giputol. So, unsa may mahitabo, kung maputol ni, maapil siya og katagak. So, there is already an impairment in his decision-making. Other one pod, giparok ang iyang ulo sa simento because possibly di na niya ma-handle ang stress. So, another impairment. This one also, sige lang kasuko, Dok, ano mo tamo silingan? Mura naman lang tong tigre, murag kadalihok, mangisog man. And then, pwede pod nga makalimot na siya ngalan. Kay maguba naman ang iyang memory or naa na may impairment sa iyang memory. So these are the following impairments or the long-term effects of your substance abuse. So what is substance use disorder? Duk, unsa man din ng substance-induced o substance abuse disorder? Maglibog lagi mi. So let us define each. So substance abuse disorder, mao kuno na siya ang pattern of symptoms resulting from use of a substance which the individual continues to take despite experiencing problems as a result. So ang individual ani nga time na siya na-note nga mga changes, nga mga bati nga changes, no? Bati nga effects. But then again, he continues to take the drug. This next slide. So, substance-induced abuse disorder. So, katong mga na-induce tungod sa substance, na ana siya yung mga effect yun ba, specifically. So, this would include intoxication, kanitanan, withdrawal, daghan kaayo, no? So, karon dili mo maglibog, dili mo matagbaw og basa, tan-awa na lang ni ninyong picture nga naa sa kilid. Again, this is supposed to be animated, but klaro raman siguro, kaila raman siguro tanan kung unsa ni. Mahimo tang zombie. So, meaning, dili na ta ka-function. Again, substance-induced abuse disorder refers to the immediate effects of substance use, called intoxication, and the immediate effects of discontinuing a substance, called withdrawal. So kung kabantay mo ang mga tao nga, Dok, akong igsuon or ako'y gagaw or akong kaila, magsige man na siya suyop sa una, dining kalit lang niyag undang. Nagkurug-kurug naman, Dok, nagtakig naman, nagsige na og tago dito sa sulod, nagkurug-kurug na gyud, di na gyud siya kabarog, or mahadlok na siya makakita og tao. So, it can possibly due to withdrawal. So, this one. What are the criteria for substance abuse disorder? How, unsaon man kuno nato pagkaila ana nga naana na siya disorder. So, naay cravings to use the substance, magpangita gyud siya. The wanting to cut or stop but cannot manage it. Ganahan siya. Magsige ra siya sulti nga, di na lagi jud ko mobalik og drugas, Dok, di na gyud ko mobalik og suyop, di na jud ko balik og alcohol. Pero maglisod siya og control. Then, there is the taking the substance in larger amounts or for longer than you're intended to. So, example ha, ang uban. Magsige na lang inom og paracetamol instead nga as needed ra unta or every 4 hours. Ang uban, gihimo naman yung vitamins. So, it is also a form of substance use. And it can lead to becoming a disorder. Next, there is a neglect to other parts of your life because of the substance use. Di na ka mosulod og trabaho. Magsige na lang kag-absent sa eskwelahan. Di na ka makikistorya sa imong mama o papa. Because you are neglecting already the essential components of your life. Next, you continue to use even when it comes to problems in relationships. So commonly, sa husband and wife, mag-away na ang bana ug asawa kay ang asawa magsige og badlong sa iyang bana nga dili na mo inom, dili naman na bako. Pero dili maminaw ang pikas, so mo nang mag-away sila. And then, using substances even when it puts you in danger. Ang uban, mo inom gihapon bisag kay baw nga naa sila'y mag-drive pa sila padung uli or mag-drive pa sila padung trabaho. Kasagaran ha, I'm not stereotyping everybody or I'm not generalizing everybody, but common report na ang kana ako nung daghang kaayong mga nasa night shift no nga mag-drive, nayuban nga mga nasa public transportation would use illegal substances prior going to work. So muna nga naay daghang kay mga vehicular accidents or even kung sila lang walay dili sila under work or anything, sila lang yun mismo like mag-drive og motor and then mo inom, mo nang madisgrasya. So we go now to the consequences of drugs since we have already discussed about the facts and the risk factors. I hope nakasubay ra pod ang atong mga audience, no? So the first consequence of illegal use or addiction is the legal consequence. So, Dok, mapriso ba tanan ang mogamit og drogas? Depende. Depende kung masakpan ka. Depende pod kung unsa kadaghan na ug how often. Unsa ang imong role, kung pusher ba ka or user ba ka or big time ba ka nga drug lord. But para di na lang jud ka mabother ani nga question, better not to start the addiction or better not dili na lang jud ka mo start sa use, diba? So under RA or Republic Act 9165 naani siya several nga mga sections. What we have here in the slide is section 5, which is the illegal sale or ang pagmamaligya or ang pag-trade. Ang next, section 15 illegal use. Section 11, illegal possession of drugs. And Section 12, illegal use of drug paraphernalia. I don't know if you know somebody or you have experienced it personally or you might have heard it from somebody or somewhere else, but these are the most common violations na committed by these individuals. Next, so what are the social consequences? Unsa man ang mga social consequences, Dok? Naaday na apektahan day gyapon mi. Yes, because your family and your peers are affected when somebody is already dependent in drug use. Family, it can lead to domestic violence, homelessness, child abuse, and eventually family disintegration or magkabuwag-buwag ang pamilya. Next, under your peers, syempre, kisa may ganahan nga mukuyog og somebody nganon nga mogamit og illegal nga drugas. Nga again, as mentioned, pwede man yun ka nga madamay, di ba? So, biyaan ka. Katong imong gipang-ingon nga friends sa kalipay, mga wala to tanan. You become an alien to them. Next, you become disengaged from school and community activity because as mentioned in the earlier slides, mawad-an naman ka og control, no? Naa na may impairment sa imong mga decision on how you handle stress and feeling nimo these are not important components sa imong life. That's why you prefer to disengage yourself from the community. Next slide, what are the vocational consequences? So again, we have the legal, the social, and the vocational. So kung vocational, commonly associated with academic and work, so failure in school, absenteeism, magsige na absent, reduced educational attainment, loss of job opportunities, delinquency, and imprisonment. So, if you know somebody or naabaka mo'y classmates or schoolmate nga wala na ninyo nakitaan sa eskwelahan or well, we are in the pandemic, that's why wala pa may face-to-face nga klase karon, no? But mailhan man ninyo kay bisan sa online class or for the teachers, if you have a student nga dili na mo pa sa iyang assignment or do not attend to his kanang schoolwork regularly anymore, so better to investigate kung unsa mo yung nahitabo ani nga person. Kay probably na-involve pud ni siya kung kalit lang yun. And if there is no other relevant reason for that. So this slide would show kung unsa kuno or asa nga part sa imong brain ang maapektuhan for that specific substance. Okay? For cocaine and amphetamine, ang iyang frontal, ang kaning nga part sa brain, mooy affected, greatly affected. For the opiates, diri pod. Alcohol, murag mas dako-dako, no? Or pariha ra siguro ni ang iyahang effect or ang part sa brain nga iyahang maapektuhan. The amygdala is where asa na ang imong mga emotions. That is the center for your emotions. So, again, alcohol is a depressant. So, muna nga, ang ihang target is here, the amygdala. Next, we go to this is more on the medical side effects of your drug addiction or drug use, ha? So, withdrawal from methamphetamine occurs kung ang chronic nga user stops taking the drug and the symptom of withdrawal would include depression, anxiety, fatigue, and an intense craving for the drug. So, methamphetamine users can increase or they are at increased risk for stroke, which can cause irreversible damage to the brain. Studies even show that higher incidence of Parkinson's disease among past users of methamphetamine. So kung dili ni siya assurance nga, Dok, 20 naman ko katuig ganing undang sa akong paggamit sa drugas, nga na-diagnose man ko Parkinson, Dok. So, even ug wala na ka, dili na ka active user, again, ang katong damage nga na-cause niya sa imuhang brain has already been there and it cannot be reversed anymore. So next, ang effect niya sa imong oral teeth, sa imong oral health. So, kung ganahan mo or nakakita mo og mga tao nga nangingunani na, posible nga ang kanang tawhanan na involved or ninggamit na og illegal drugs before. Because the acids in the manufacturing process of methamphetamine destroys teeth. So this is what you call your meth mouth. So methamphetamine makes people high, but chronic meth use also heightens the risk for dental obstruction. Meth mouth typically involves rampant tooth decay, kani daghan na kayong mga decayed nga teeth, dry mouth, cracked teeth, and gum disease. And it can rob meth users not only of their smiles but also of their ability to chew. So kanang mga pangag, dili lang kay mauwaw na sila mukatawa, but ang ilang pagkaon ana, ang ilang pag-usap or ang ilang pag-chew sa ilang food is also affected. Because meth can block or lessen the effects of dental pain. So meth users often don't experience the pain that would be expected of such extensive tooth decay. So bisag na nga naananay decay or naananay kanang hugaw diha, di na nila mabantayan. Kay again, ma-block naman sa substance ang feeling, no? Nga, ang sakit nga feeling. So munang later on, magkadugay, magkagrabi pod until nga wala na'y mahimo, mga tangtang na gyud tanan ihangipon. Meth causes the vessels that supply blood to oral tissues to shrink, mugagmay, and teeth and gums need blood in order to stay healthy. In addition to destroyed teeth, meth users who snort may have burns in back of their throats. So see, in ana kada drastic ang effect. Methamphetamine, I'm referring to shabu. Okay, so smoking. So for those smokers, kung makabantay mo, lagum lagi kina siya lips, Dok. Itom kay lips. Mura man siya nag-lipstick og kanang kuan, ata no, or nag-lipstick siya og blood. So even e-cigarettes can still contain other chemicals and heavy metals that are bad for the body and teeth. The nicotine in these products can damage gum tissue and reduce saliva production, resulting in bad breath, receding gums, and tooth loss. So mga pangagihapon ni sila. Next, marijuana. So this is a picture of a person who is using marijuana for some time. So we have the medical condition xerostomia, which is one of the most common effects of smoking pot, wherein many users experience cotton mouth. Xerostomia or dry mouth is caused by underfunctioning salivary glands. So cannabis smoking is associated with periodontal complications, xerostomia, and leukoplakia, as well as increased risk of mouth and neck cancer. Next, we go to alcohol. So alcohol dries the mouth and can even dehydrate your entire body. So the drying effects of alcohol can result in white tongue, a condition that occurs when papilla become inflamed. So kanino? Kaning mamula. And bacteria and dead cells become trapped within them, causing a white film to cover the surface of the tongue. So mauna ni siya, which is found in patients with tongue cancer. Kani, there is an erosion of your teeth already. While this one, the third picture, kaning naay dugo, is due to trauma. Another complication or another consequence is its effect to your heart. So, drugs can cause heart diseases. The stimulant effects of most drugs of abuse, including cocaine and methamphetamine, would cause drastic changes or drastic effects to your heart. So, methamphetamine overdose can lead to stroke, heart attack, and other organ problems such as kidney failure. Because ma-overwork man ang imong kasing-kasing. Diba? Ang iyang function is to pump blood. So, with chronic use or with abuse of the substance, ang imo pong heart, paspas pug kaayo kay mo compensate man siya sa iyang function or sa iyang work to distribute or to, kung sa tao pa, murag daghan kay siya trabaho nga buhaton. So most drugs can have adverse cardiovascular effects ranging from abnormal heart rate to heart attack. Injection drug use can also lead to cardiovascular problems such as collapsed veins and bacterial infections of the blood vessels and heart valves. So, kaninga slide, would show hypertension and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So, mudako ang ang size sa iyang heart more than the normal. Next, again, related to the cardiac complication, eventually the person would lead to heart failure. We have also infective endocarditis. This is commonly related to those nga magamit og intravenous drug use or kanabitang mga injectables. So they are most high risk for this one. And sudden cardiac death. So, most especially your ecstasy, no, katubitang designer drugs nga na-mentioned earlier, can cause a number of acute adverse health effects. For example, while fatal overdose of MDMA or ecstasy are rare, they can potentially be life-threatening, with symptoms including high blood pressure, mukalit lang og shoot up ang imong BP, faintness, makuyapan ang tao, makakos po di siya og panic attacks, and in severe cases, loss of consciousness and seizure. And ang pinaka-bati gid ani niyang effect is kaning sudden cardiac death. So, Dok, TB, magka-TB pud ko ani, Dok, kung mugamit og drugs? Yes. So, people who use and inject illicit drugs are at high risk of contracting tuberculosis, whether or not they are infected with HIV, which is very common in Africa, no? Why? Because kasagaran sa mga tao nga mogamit og illegal drugs, anha na sila anang mga suok-suok, kay di ba magtago-tago man na sila. So mangita na sila og area nga makatapok sila nga di sila daling masakpan. And with that, immunocompromised naman sila. Dili na wala na sila proper nutrition kay they prefer drugs over the nutrients that they should be taking, no. So ang mahitabuan na nila from immunocompromise ang ilang immune system, plus pagyud ma-aggravate pagyud sa environment nga magtapok sila didto, wala na social distancing, and possibly naanay tao nga naka-experience na ato, so magtinakdanay na sila. Especially when there is poor ventilation, ha? So, kana laging magdasok. So, again, tuberculosis is the leading cause of infectious morbidity and mortality worldwide. I don't know if you are familiar with this person, kaning babae, diri sa atong slide. Her name was Sarah Jane Salazar, no? She was an HIV victim of AIDS. She died of AIDS way back several years ago. So, drug use plays a more general role in the spread of HIV by increasing the likelihood of high-risk sex with infected partners. Kay kasagaran man sa itong mga drug users, mawala na lagi ang ilang inhibition, na nay impairment sa ilang judgment on how they decide for themselves on what to do, whether it is right or wrong. So, Di naman sila maka-decide. So anybody nga makahatag nila ana nga pleasure, or if naa sila sa level nga high kaayo sila, di na sila mo decide, di na sila ka-think og ganang tarong, muna nga pwede nga makig-sex na lang sila ug bisan kinsa, bisag wala sila kaila. So what are these high-risk behaviors? So people who inject methamphetamine are at increased risk of contracting infectious diseases such as HIV and hepatitis. So these are transmitted through contact of blood and bodily fluids. So kanang mga injectables and sexually transmitted diseases, no? Because some majority of these people do not use contraceptives or are engaging in unprotected sexual practices. How about drugs and pregnancy? Yes, daghan gyapon kaayo. So dili tanang mabdus or dili gyud ta kaingon nga mabdus man na siya mo nang wala gina siya mogamit or dili na siya addict. Of course not. There are so many cases wherein pregnant women still continue their vices even nga naa sila sa childbearing stage. So, ang konsekwensya na inigawa sa ilang mga anak, either stillbirth or patay ang ilang bata or naay mga congenital defects. So, this picture would show kung unsa ang mga changes nga nahitabo, the before and the after picture of these women. From 2004 to 2013, before siya ning gamit og drugs, until such time nga nagdrugas na siya, this one also. So imagine the change. Imagine the change nga mahitabo sa imuhang lawas. Another slide would show the before and after photo of this woman. This picture here is supposed to be an animation, no, nga mo show sa iyang transition kung unsa iyang naong before and after. So, what are unsa man kuri gibuhat sa gobyerno? Unsa man para makatabang sa atong problema sa drugas? So we have the comprehensive drug addiction treatment. That's why ning exist ang atong mga drug rehabilitation centers, because this is the aim of the government. This is how the government would try to help the problem of drug addiction in the Philippines. So ang kanisiya is involved not only with doctors, but we also have psychologists, we have the social workers, the nurses, and the other domains that would help these patients to change or to help them with their drug problems. So, medical services, substance use monitoring. We also have the legal services, katong mga case management, the social worker, the psychologist. We also have the family and vocational services. We have an occupational therapist. We also do ALS program for them. We also offer them that. So, mag-invite so that these people, kay kasagaran ani nila, wala man gid ni sila katiwa sa ilang panag-eskwela. So, they continue their education here. So, to summarize, taas-taas atong lecture, no? So, the activities nga ma-involve or ma-commit sa usa ka tawo or maapektuhan kung mo-involve siya sa drug use is ma-involve siya sa crime. Pwede nga magsugod siya og sugal, buying and spending too much in excess. So mapiktahan po ang iyang exercise and at work. So, ang substances nga maka-contribute ani are the following. So, drugs, nicotine, caffeine, even the prescription drugs, alcohol, the cannabis. So, per se, mura siyang sanga-sanga. Kung sa kahoy pa, ang problem ang good with drugs does not only involve that person alone. Again, it's a complex disease and it involves a lot of factors. So, it will involve people, the relationships that you have, the feelings that you have inside, anger, rage, guilt, and fear, and also your thoughts. It also involves this one and affects greatly this one. Okay? So, with that, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Hello. Sorry, I was on mute. Mute. Okay. Thank you so much, Doc. Doc Mary Grace, for sharing your knowledge with us. And now it is open for our questions. If you have, you can just comment, and we will flash your questions. So, Doc, I have here a question. I have a question, Doc. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. uh, kana bitaw, naami silingan ba?
Mm-hmm.
Ang iyahang kaning murag makita na ko siya nga murag alcohol abuse na gid siya kay nga naman everyday siya gakahubog.
Okay.
Everyday siya gakahubog tapos uh, tibo buntag gabi mag-inom sige ra gyud siya inom and then naabot ang time nga namatay na, actually last week lang siya namatay. Kana
Mhm.
bitaw I don't know di bitaw may kabalo kung naunsa gid to siya wa kay grabe iyang inom karon nag-inom siya. For the week inom siya then karon na day nag-inom na pud siya and then after niya pag-inom nikaon siya daghang balot. Oo, nikaon siya daghang balot. Dayon pila lang ka minutes naghuot iyang dughan and then naghuot iyang dughan and then ang nahitabo sa iya kay ang iya bitaw ngipon nangatangtang tanan.
Mm.
Oo,
Okay.
ano to siya? Oo, nangatangtang siya tanan murag nag-strong siya ba kay siguro nagut ang duhan tapos tanan gyud niyang ngipon natangtang gyud.
On that
Is it
instant, tangtang
oh,
yun.
yes, oo, natang as in nahibong gyud mi kay kami gitabangan namo ba kay ba minalage unsaon ni namo siya naunsa na ni siya unya dili man siya kasulti sige ra siya ana sa iyahang pub sa iyahang dughan ba. Nakita namo sa pag-strong niya nagbro bitaw siya nanggahi bitaw so iyang tibuok nito nangatangtang nangalahos di kadto siya na kadto bitaw na trauma or something or unsa toy nahitabo.
Okay. So based sa imong history nga gisulti karon ma'am no nga you have a neighbor that is a chronic alcoholic drinker na everyday gyud hubog.
Everyday
So
gyud siya
and then
gahubog
kalit
way
lang
adlaw.
nga
Oo, way adlaw nga dili siya mahubog.
okay. So kalit lang aning namatay siya on the
Oo,
spot.
kalit lang. Oo, on the spot.
Okay. And then nangatangtang pa gyud ang tanan niyang ngipon
Oo.
right there and then.
Oo.
So probably what that man experienced was he had convulsion or he had seizure kay nanggahi man kaha. So
nanggahi.
possible pod na during that attack ang iyahang mga teeth nangatangtang because of the force, no? Kay nangusog man siya. When somebody experiences or is experiencing a convulsion or a seizure, ang ilaha naa na dili naman gud na sila aware kung unsa ang ilahang gipangbuhat no or ang ilahang muscle ba wala na coordination during that time. So possibly because of that and nganong matangtang man because weak na siguro to or loose na kay to ang iyahang mga ngipon pod. So dili na siya strong or dili na strong ang iyahang kapit ato didto mo na nga dali na lang po siya nangahingo. So katupod siguro another complication since dili man pud the sure no if he's taking other substances aside from the alcohol kay dako man jud kay og possibility nga dili lang alcohol ang iyang ginatake. And as said earlier, it is more dangerous if alcohol is mixed or if you use alcohol mixed with another substance. It can cause more adverse effect to your body. So ang endpoint gyud ato is tanan tong mga abuse nga mga substances nga gi-mention, ang iyang pinaka-fatal or ang iya yung end stage nga consequence ato is death. So, in the long run, kung dili gid nato tabangan or dili gid nato ma-control ang pag-use niya ana nga substance, pwede man gyud na siya nga mo result or mo affect sa other organs niya, the kidneys, the liver, the brain. So, mao to'y possibilities nga nahitabo sa katong nga tao.
Lagi ka na yun ana ang mga tao dok ba nga kung saan man na sila pag kuan nga ma-encourage na mo go to rehab, may yun ana ba. Kay lisod kaayo gud, luoy gid kay ang pamilya kay wala to siya walay trabaho iyang asawa dok agra gyud og kana bitang yuta para lang makaparta siya unya ang iyang bana palahubog pag yun dili mutabang ba na luoy kaayo kana ba yun ana wala na trabaho and then bisyoso pa and then unsaon man na sila nga para ma-help bitaw.
Okay. So as part of the community, what you can possibly do no is since naaman siya wife and dili raman pud naa ba ni siya mga anak ma'am or sila rang duha sa iyang wife? Naay mga anak. So
Oh,
what you can
na
possibly do as part of the community and as a concerned citizen is pwede mo approach sa inyong barangay. We have the barangay health workers who can convince or who can try to talk to this person or even the family members para nga ma-convince ninyo ang tao to submit himself for therapy. Kay kung ato lang yung pasagdan, mo man to atong giingon ganiha, naa magyutay contribution no as an individual to that to our co-sister or sa atong brother sa community. We ought that responsibility. So there are specific agencies or even sa barangay level that can help you with that if you know somebody or naay mga neighbors or nakay kailang who you think needs help.
dool na lang gid sa
Mm.
ana sa municipality.
Yes, ma'am.
Nay question dere daw na is rugby considered as a drug how it lead to addiction especially to kids in the streets.
Okay. Yes, drug B is considered as a drug. It falls under the category of inhalants, no? Again, maura gihapon to ang iyahang kay common man gyud na natong makita especially sa streets no kanang mga bata diha nga nagpalaboy-laboy. Mo man ang ilahang way good kay again still applicable no with the other substances of abuse as mentioned earlier. It also affects the natural reward system of our brain. So mo bitaw nga mas mo prefer sila, di na sila gutumon, kay makakagbi naman sila. So ang logic gihapon na is mo release gihapon siya og dopamine once nga ma-inhale na nato ang substance. So once nga maka-develop na sila og tolerance later on mo na nga mas mo choose sila nga mag-rugby na lang instead nga mupaon. So ang kanang rugby is considered as an abuse drug. And it falls under the category of inhalants.
Kanito, is there a way of not being an addict of drugs or not being addict of it?
Sorry, I did not get the question. Can you repeat it, ma'am? Thank you.
Is there a way of not being an addict of drugs or not being addict of it?
So is there a way of being an addict to drugs or not being an addict to it? Of course, as mentioned earlier, we define the term addiction. No, so what is addiction? Ma-consider ba nimo ang usa ka tawo nga katulagi nga kung kausa kaduha ra siya ning gamit og drugs? Do you consider him as a drug addict already? The answer is no. Because naaman sa tuy phases addiction, di ba nga mag-experiment pa siya. And then, mahimo na dahing social or recreational. So, the the phase of addiction or the stages of addiction does not necessarily mean nga once nga ning sugod ka og gamit og drugs, you are considered already a drug addict or a drug dependent. You have to go through a phase. Okay, depende man na sa imong level sa tolerance, how often and how frequent you use the drug. I hope I got the question right.
Is cigarette a drug? Na question na rin daw.
Yes, definitely. Nicotine, which is the component of your cigarette, is considered a drug. Consider lang na siya nga drug of abuse when you are no longer, you do not know how to control the use of it. The number of sticks that you use per day is more than the usual. And then, kung unsa po ang imong intention or imong perception kung unsaon siya kung unsay reason nimo behind using the drug. So, kung ang katong imong reason is ang katong mentioned nato earlier nga makapa-relax nimo, makapasuppress sa imong appetite, and then you are using it on a basis nga makahurot na kag isa ka pack in a day or more than that, then that is already considered as drug addiction or as an abuse drug.
Kani, does using vape considered as addiction? Uso karon dok ba nga kadong vape?
Well, na-mention po na to earlier ka ng mga e-cigarettes, no? Yes, it is still considered as as an abuse substance. Because, again, when you say abuse, it would matter on the how you use it, the intention of using it, how frequently you use it. So, maugid na siya ang atong category manggod, or when do we say that it is already abuse or but yeah, e-cigarette is also considered. Moto nga naa pud gyapon siya yung mga effect katong sa atong picture ganiha nga ang katungipon kay na nadaot na pod due to smoking, because e-cigarettes contained other chemicals and heavy metals man sad good. Although less lang siguro yun siya than the regular cigarette katong nicotine, but they are still bad for the body and teeth.
Okay. Doc, another question, Doc. If after kana bitaw na ka sa rehab, then mugawas ka sa rehab or example lang, for almost 1 year kag rehab, and then is there a possible nga mubalik lang gihapon ka sa imong gibuhat sa una?
Yes, because relapse or kanang pagbalik sa kanang atong bisyo is part of the scope of addiction. Apil gid na siya. So, but we do not consider relapse or relapse does not indicate that the treatment is already failing. Because again, it is part man na siya sa ato sa therapy nato for addiction or how we manage addiction. But yes, atong question nga, is there still a possibility nga after ma-rehab, mubalik gihapon siya? Yes, there is. Even for those people bitaw, or we often have patients nga several years, more than 2 years na sila nga sober, and then mubalik day gihapon sila sa ilahang old ways. So that is very possible. Because again, they are at high risk manggod. High risk naman good sila.
So, is there any other questions? So I think there's no question anymore. So we will proceed to giving of certificate. So allow me to read the citation. So, University of Southern Philippines Foundation Guidance and Testing Services Center Certificate of Appreciation is given to Dr. Mary Grace Sangual Binidian for extending her valuable time and expertise during the webinar entitled Risk Factor of Substance Abuse with the theme Share Facts on Drugs, Save Lives in celebration of Drug Awareness Month, given this 26th of November 2021 at University of Southern Philippines Foundation, Cebu City. Signed by Eleta Elque, PhD RGC Director of GTSC, also by Dr. Ernesto L. Alaler, the VP Academic Affairs, and signed by Attorney Paulino Iyabao, President. Thank you so much, Doc. So another certificate is given to the Department of Health Treatment and Rehabilitation Center, Cebu City Advocacy and Education Committee, given this 26th of November 2021 at University of Southern Philippines Foundation, Cebu City, signed by Dr. Eleta Elque, Director of GTSC, Dr. Ernesto E. Aloler, VP Academic Affairs, and Attorney Paulino Iyabao, the President. Also, another certificate is given to okay. So another certificate is given to the Department of Health Treatment and Rehabilitation Center, Cebu City, given this 26th of November 2021 at the University of Southern Philippines Foundation, Cebu City, signed by Eleta Elque, Director of GTSC, Dr. Ernesto L. Alaler, the VP Academic Affairs, and Attorney Paulino Iyabao, the President. So, thank you so much, Doc Mary Grace, for the very knowledgeable talk for our webinars for today.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Doc. So at this juncture, to formally close our webinars, let us have the Dean of College of Teacher Education, Arts and Sciences, Dr. Janet Arcana.
Ma'am Sheena, am I audible?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Our resource speaker, Dr. Mary Grace Sangual Binidian, and the rest of the personnel from the Department of Health, USPF colleagues, parents, guests, USPNs from basic education to the tertiary level, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. In a news I've read last November 24, a boxing champion said in an interview that drug users are victims of circumstances in life and that must be given second chance. Drug abuse in the Philippines started in the early 70s, of which around 20,000 individuals used marijuana. At present, drugs have been evolving. This substance addiction has affected thousands of lives. How can society eradicate this? Let me share with you an inspiring story of a woman whose life is penned very simply about her incredible battle to find a way to live. Born the year her parents immigrated from Europe, in a large Catholic family, she experienced poverty, neglect, rejection, and attachment before the age of 18. She had no sense of self and felt invisible most of the time. Her father passed away after battling cancer for 11 years when she was 19. It was then her world took a bad turn when she fell in love with a drug addict and a drug dealer. 24 years later, after using heroin every day, While trying to raise her 5 children, circumstances forced her to leave him. He and her 3-year-old daughter had only one bag of clothes and a stroller. They were homeless for 3 months, and she attempted suicide. Without a car, a phone, money, or friends, and in very poor health, she was lost and broken and needed help but was too stubborn to reach out, believing her life to be worthless and of no value. She did not attend any detox, meetings, rehabs, counselors, or doctors, but with only sheer determination and persistence to overcome her dependency on drugs. She began her harrowing journey towards the light of truth and found freedom in Christ alone. She remains clean to this day and is a very private person who has authored a number of books. She wrote her story only to help people who suffer like she did and need help to find a way to live without drugs, to bring hope and insight to anyone who struggles and suffers from substance abuse and mental health issues. Elizabeth Moldovan's true story is in the Harvard University Library. Addiction, according to Alice Miller, is a sign, a signal, a symptom of distress, and a language that tells us a plight that must be understood. Knowing its risks and consequences, what is then the most essential is the development of a person's character and how he or she faces certain circumstances. Remember Helen Keller, a blind, a deaf, and a true model of overcoming strife who believes that character cannot be developed in ease and quiet only through experience of trial and suffering can be the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. USPF, as an educational institution, has been one with the world in saving lives. As we develop each individual's character with one of its thrusts to be a drug-free community and support for a drug-free Philippines. Thank you and keep safe, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Janet. So now we'll proceed to the another reminders for our participants for the webinar. Please, we'll send the evaluation form through this link, and or you can see it the evaluation form through our Facebook page, official Facebook page of GTSC. So please fill out the evaluation form 12 noon until 2 p.m. only. Okay, so thank you everyone. Doc, thank you so much, Dr. Janet, for the closing remarks, and to our speakers, Dr. Mary Grace Pinedian. Thank you so much for the time that you shared to us for the very wonderful, knowledgeable PowerPoint presentation to the USPF.